Good afternoon, and welcome to A Beer with the Old Growler. I'm the Old Growler, Peter LaFrance, and it is a pleasure to have you with us here. It is exactly 5 o'clock, which means that it's time for a beer. I tell you, I have been thirsting for a beer all day long. And what is today? Today is the 15th of May, 2020, and this is the 40th edition of the Old Growler. And for those of you who have been hanging around with me, I do thank you very much. This is also the 60th day of Pause, New York, which means we have not had any pubs, bars, or taverns open. And that's been a little bit difficult for myself, being a journalist that's been covering the industry. And if you're wondering why the Old Growler exists, well, I'll tell you. That can be found on the front page of this channel where the trailer is, and I explain all of the good stuff there. Okay, let's see. First of all, after that, I'm going to have myself a beer. And I did get over to the Henry Street Ale House. Yes, sir, I did. And Marco was there and serving up. I do believe this is I've run out of the roads, so I'm not doing 2 roads today. This is oh good heavens. It's a push me, pull me, and it's a hazy New England style ale. And it comes from, I'll have to look up on the receipt. But it's not, it's certainly not 2 roads. And it is a Brooklyn beer. There we go. Let's take a look. Oh, I don't know what it is, but we'll find out. Okay, it's 5 o'clock. The sun is over the yard arm, or whatever the heck it's supposed to be, and it's time for a beer. Cheers. Oh, I see I've got 3 folks here. It's always good to see everybody. It's a bit of a sour beer. Push me, pull me. It's not 2 roads, and it's not full cut. Oh, crap. Anyways, it's a refreshing beer. I'm glad to have a sip. It's been an interesting day. I did some clearing up here, and later on we're going to find out what I found. Before we get to the tasting, though, since this is the last of the well, the 40th growler. 40th? I thought I said 30th. This is the 40th growler. Oh my word! We're going to focus things up next week, and we're going to focus on Brooklyn beers. In fact, instead of going out and driving around and picking them up curbside, I'm going to do an experiment, and I'm going to see which of the breweries here in Brooklyn deliver, and what kind of beers can I get from them. So that's going to be the experiment for next week. All you have to do to find out what we'll be sampling is take a look at my Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn accounts, and they'll all have Twitter as well. They'll all have a picture of the beer, probably around 2 or 3, maybe in the afternoon. I'd like to get it in before noon, but who knows? But in any event, we'll also be working a little on the format of Beer with the Old Growler. We're going to start out with a 2-part. The growler is going to be 2 parts starting next week, and it's not a major part, but the first part is going to be the tasting. We're going to get right on with the tasting. First of all, a taste of the growler that we've got from the ale house, and then we'll get right down to the particular beer that has been noted as the beer of the day. And today It's going to be Hollows and Fentimans alcoholic ginger beer. Here we go. That's what it looks like. And this is a little bit different. We often have friends in fermentation stop by. And that is one of the friends in fermentation. And that's what we're going to be having. Now, if you took a look at the introduction on the first, the trailer they call it, on the first page of landing page, I guess it's called, of this channel, you get an idea of, do that and you get an idea of what we have been doing here at the Old Growler. But essentially, the part two of the, after we do the tasting, then it's time for part two. And that is my life as a professional barfly, in which I recall and remember some of the more memorable moments of being a journalist, covering the malt beverage and the spirits and wine industry, as well as the hospitality industry for the last 35, 40 years. And I've written a couple of books. I'll introduce you to those books probably later on. One of them is Cooking, Eating with Beer. The other is Beer Basics, published in 1995 and 1997 by John Wiley & Sons. And so I do have a bit of a history, and some of the history of what I've learned going to dinners and visiting pubs, bars, restaurants, and in fact, I was lucky enough to be able to travel through Europe for a couple of years as well. So those will be the stories that come after the tasting. So if you care to stay after the tasting, I would appreciate it. And I would also appreciate it for those of you who have not, if you wouldn't mind subscribing and giving me a thumbs up, passing me around, share me with some of the other folks that you think might be interested, and even better, don't forget to click on the alert bell down there so that you know when all of our tastings go hot. All right. I think what we're going to do is we're going to start with our tasting today. And how this is done is if you take a look at some of the tastings under Henry Street Ale House tastings, or tastings at Henry Street Ale House, that particular playlist will get you to it, and you'll see how we do our hey Dave and hey Mary, good to see you both, and thanks for the thumbs up. I do appreciate it. The way we do things, have done things in the past before the Old Growler came along, was meeting expectations at the Henry Street Ale House, in which we got together every Thursday and had a couple of beers, usually to taste, and we would read the label off, just as if we were regular consumers and sitting around in the store and figuring out what we were going to drink. And we'd take a look at the label, we'd get an idea of exactly what we were going to expect from this, and then Jerry Scott, the bar manager and the bartender and manager, and Jim Bennis, a good buddy on the barfly, and usually some other customers. It was very rarely that it was just the three of us that had the tasting. So it was kind of a social event, and I'm looking forward to it again. But anyway, let's recreate this and take a look at what we've got here. This was sent to me by the people at Hollows and Fentimans, and it is a ginger beer. Let's start at the very top with the necker up here. It says it's an alcoholic ginger beer, 4% by volume, and on the bottle it looks like a Best Buy 28 December 20, and then it has some lettering on it, the code, the bottling code. And starting on the label, it says, "Beware of imitations, only genuine if signed in blue." Well, it's certainly signed in blue. That's signage, if anything. Okay, it has the title of the folks that make it, Hollows and Fentimans. Botanically brewed with the finest natural ginger root, alcoholic ginger beer, and it's gluten-free. And let's see, what else does it say here? Thomas Fentiman, 1 pint. It's it says upend before before pouring for full enjoyment. I don't know if I'm going to upend myself, but I'll do the bottle, that's for sure. Established in a perfect factory, that's ballsy, in the north of England. Botanically brewed since 1905, slow fermented ginger root. All right. And on the back here it says, Hollows Fentimans alcoholic ginger beer, beware of imitations. But once again, Hollows Fentimans alcoholic ginger beer is made using a time-honored recipe from just 5 ingredients: ginger root, water, sugar, pear juice, and yeast. If it's a beer, it needs malt of some sort, or a grain. Well, okay. Let's see. Nutritional facts. Boy, they got the sodium and everything, all kind of good stuff here. Imported by Fentimans USA in Manhasset, Long Island. Brewed and bottled by Thomas Hardy Limited. Ooh, now there's a name that's familiar. We've got the Thomas Hardy Ales, but they're not brewed by the Thomas Hardy Limited Company. And this is in Kendal, Cambria, the UK. And it warns me if I'm pregnant, I shouldn't drink this. Right. Well, ginger beer. That's not made. The beer that's not made with any hops or malt. All right. Well, what am I expecting? Well, I've had ginger beer before, and I'm sure a bunch of you had as well. And it is a spicy little devil, and it's probably a nice and clear. I'm expecting. No, wait a minute. They told me to tip this up, so or invert. Please upend for full enjoyment. All right. Well, I upended it. Let's crack it open and see what happens. Wrong pocket, Peter. All right, here we go. Oh, nice little hiss. Well, it's not an old beer, Peter. It was just probably bottled a couple of weeks ago. All right, take a look at the label now. What are we expecting? It already said it's blue, and if it's blue, it's genuine, and it's the sign of the right times, and all kinds of good stuff. And it's got the gluten-free and everything else free. So, except that's not alcohol-free. So, thank goodness for small favors. Let's pour this little devil. Well, that's a nice, clear little beer. Beverage. Fermented product. Oh. Whoa, yes, sirree, Bob. That's the ginger. Oh. It's not, it's a little sweet. And it's got a ginger there. It's not a real bite of a ginger, but it's a good enough ginger. This will go great with a dark and stormy. That's what we need. We need a little rum to go in here. Do we have any rum? No. I don't have any rum. But friends in fermentation and distillation, what do I have? Oh, yes, sir, Bob. Closest thing to a rum I could get around here is a bourbon whiskey, Deadwood bourbon whiskey. Now, what would happen if we added a little Deadwood to this? Well, let's find out. Going to add a shot. Let's see, a dark and stormy is pretty much the bourbon or the rum on ice, and then you finish it with the ginger beer. But I'm not that silly, so I'm just going to pour a little of the bourbon into the ginger beer and see what we get. Cheers. Well, I'll tell you something. The snap of the ginger goes rather well with that sweetness of the bourbon. I've had a little orange twist and a nice rock in there. That would be fun. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Yep. But I wonder what would happen if you use something lighter. I mean, rum is pretty heavy and a little spicier. Well, let's find out. We're going to take our buddy here, our alcoholic ginger beer. We're going to pour it in to another glass. I'm not going to be quite so generous. Okay, we got a little ginger beer here now. Let's introduce it to a blonde. No, not to a blonde, but anyway, to what they call a white spirit. Whoa! Underneath here, yes, sir, Bob. We have got, and this is what I've been making Negronis with over the last couple of weeks. Monopolova dry gin, triple distilled from potatoes, produced and bottled by J.A. Bakshkovetsky in Vienna, Austria. It has been a lot of fun with the Negronis. Let's see what it tastes like with a little ginger in it. So this is ginger gin. So we got the botanicals and the spice. Let's see what happens. So not too much, Peter. There you go, just enough to flavor it. And you had to ferment the potatoes before you could distill it. So we're still friends in fermentation. All right, gin in a ginger beer. Now that's an interesting aroma. Oh, good Lord. I might have beaten out the dark and stormy. This might be a clear day forever. Whoa. Okay. The good people at Hollows and Fentimans sent me 2 bottles of this. And so I've got another one hiding in the refrigerator. And boy, oh boy, the next time, I think what we're going to do is I'm going to find some ice. I got to get a bag of ice somehow. Our freezer is kind of small, so it's a little room. It's a room problem. But maybe I'll freeze a little ice in a glass of it, a nice size, so that we can really try this one out. That's an amazing flavor. Ginger beer and gin. We have to come up for a name for that. So, in the end, as we come to the end of all things, does Hollows and Fentimans alcoholic ginger beer meet expectations? Yes, it does. In fact, it exceeds expectations. I really had fun playing with this one. This one was a lot of fun. So yes, Hollows and Fentimans alcoholic ginger beer meets expectations, and that's our tasting for today. For those of you who are going to hang out a little bit, I would appreciate it. For those of you who are leaving, again, as I say, do me a favor and subscribe and show up again. I would appreciate that as well. Now, we get to the my life as a professional barfly. And as I noted before, I've written a couple of books, freelanced for a good 7 years for such magazines as Cheers, All About Beer, Modern Brewery Age, Ale Street News, oh boy, all of the brews papers that were out there. And I started out freelancing. Most of the time you would start out you'd start as an intern in college, and you'd go to work you'd intern while you were a senior, and then you'd go into the print, either a magazine or a newspaper, as a reporter or someone starting out, and you'd work your way up. And by the time you got an entire Rolodex, look it up, and Google up Rolodex. And we used to have Rolodexes, and once you had a full Rolodex and you were focused and you had a reputation, then you could go out and freelance and write a book, and the world all was hunky-dory and everything. Well, that's not the way I did it. I'm old France. I do things backwards. I started out as a freelance. Cold, absolutely cold. But I managed to get in touch with some of the other publishers, or some of the publishers and some of the editors at the time. And we're talking back in 76, 80. We're talking 79, 80, 81. But eventually, after, boy, that tastes different after that gin. Boy. Ooh. Anyways, after the first couple, 3 years of freelancing, I answered a cold ad in the New York Times for a junior editor. And I went in and I interviewed at Beverage Media Magazine, which was a collection of, it was a trade book for the wine and spirits industry. Essentially what they were, there was, I think it was 12 different publications around the United States. They were all price books, essentially catalogs for the liquor and wine wholesalers. So that the restaurants could subscribe and they would know what the prices were, what was available, this type of thing. And this is before the net, the internet. So what would happen would be that the publisher, the publisher had put these together. Actually, his father had. And he figured out, though, that if you had X amount of pages of editorial and X amount of pages of the catalog, you could mail it through the mail service as a magazine, not a catalog, and it would cost less. And whoop-de-doo. So that's exactly what he did. And the editorial content would come out of New York, and it would go out to the different publications, and each one of the editors out there would do cut and slice whatever they liked. But it was mainly they would take the feature articles, which were usually 3, and local news. And they would handle the local news. And as we did in New York, we would handle the local news. So that was pretty much the object. And I went in and I interviewed, and I got I got my book of clips. We used to have clips. You would clip them out of a magazine and put it in a portfolio and walk in and show it to the publisher or the editor. So I walked in, showed it to Billy. You see, I don't know whether, yeah, what the hell. Bill Sloan was running the operation at the time. And I walked in and showed him the portfolio. He did a little interview there. And so I walked, he called me up or his editor, the Dragon lady, called me up for an interview and said, come in at a certain time. And so I did. I dressed up in my little suit and tie, and I didn't have a hat then, but I did have my portfolio. So I walked into his office and I introduced myself and I gave him my portfolio and I stood there. But now he was expecting somebody to come in, ranting and raving, and this is what we can do, and this is what we can do, and that was what we can do, and I didn't. I just let my portfolio talk for myself, and he wasn't impressed. However, his cousin, who actually ran the operation out of Jersey, took a look at it, and he said, "Oh, it's okay. So don't take it too hard. That's the way Billy is." And a couple of I guess it had to be a week later, I got a phone call from the editor, the senior editor, that they had a space in the magazine for a sports bar. And they had just seen that I had done a freelance piece on sports bars. And would I be interested in doing an article for them? Freelance, you never pass it up. So anyways, I had a chance to go to Mickey Mantle's, which is on Central Park South. And I can't remember the manager's name, but this is what the menu looked like back then. And let me run off a few things. What do we have? And this was your Manhattan appetizers were, nothing was over $10. Your main courses, nothing was over there's a $16.75 hickory smoked St. Louis ribs with corn muffins and 7 vegetable slaw. So this was a real tourist attraction. So I went and interviewed the bar manager. And we talked a little bit about how sports bars worked and everything, and it turned into an article, of course. I finished it, and not only that, but I finished it a week ahead. So I sent it in there, and I got a call back afterwards. They said the check was in the mail. Yeah. They also said, "We'd like you to come back for an interview." So I said, "Okay." I'm not proud or tired. I was willing to let it come around again on the guitar. And so I did. And I actually got the job. So that gave me a chance. I was a junior editor. I was a peon. But I'm not going to say her name, but the Dragon lady, she ran the show, and it was a traditional old magazine. You had the mailroom and the copy people, and you had the, we were just starting to get into computers. Cupcake, the fellow who ran the art department, he had a Mac, and we had a PC. And so trying to get the Mac to transfer to the PCs, it was a world. But anyways, I was excited at the time. Yes, I was, because I had a chance to really learn about magazines, and so that was my my introduction. And after that, I was able to, as I say, start with writing books. Beer Basics came immediately after I was relieved of my command with extreme prejudice. And after that, it was cooking and eating with beer. And when I did that, when I wrote that book, I had a chance to go to places like the Hudson River Club. Wally Maloof was the chef there. And one of his recipes is in cooking and eating with beer. It has to do with pumpkin soup. And the pumpkin soup that he did, when he finished it, would put it into a little pumpkin, ladle it in. It would only be 3/4 of the way full, but then he would finish it off with an ale. So you had a very frothy soup, and that was wonderful. That was one of the fun things that you got to do as a journalist. Now, it all wasn't just beer. When at Bev Media, there was covering the wine industry as well. And the folks at Wildman Wines, Frederick Wildman and Sons Limited, they were one of the big boys who did a lot of advertising with beverage. We got a lot of invitations to wine dinners. Now, this is a menu from the Dîner Annuel de Vatel Club. Dimanche, 19 janvier, 1992. World Yacht Cruises, New York. And so they would take us out on a cruise, and these were top French chefs in the New York area. And the Vatel Club, it was named after Vatel, the French chef, I believe he was under Louis XIV, who was asked to do a state dinner, and he did, but he was told that the fish apparently was underdone. And so in being a distraught chef, he immediately committed suicide. So this is a chef's club, essentially named after someone who committed suicide because he wasn't good enough. Figure that one out. But anyways, this particular dinner in 1992, if my memory is correct, Jean-Georges Van Riesen was the chef, the featured chef, and I do have a signed copy of this hanging on the wall. So that was one of the other fun things. And it's amazing as to the amount of the dinner was, let's see, well, it's all in France. Well, geez, they had the Consul General of France there, a reception with Paul Roger Brut non-vintage. That was all right. But it was a real thrill to be able to meet and talk to some of these chefs. And being, I was, for a strange reason, not. I didn't push things. I asked lots of who, what, when, where, and whys, and listened. And I think that's one of the most important things of being a journalist, is to be able to listen. Now, okay, that was a lot of fun, but the real fun came later on when I started doing some research into visiting and enjoying the small breweries and the original microbreweries and brew pubs in New York. One of them was Zip City in downtown. I think it was on 18th or 19th Street. And I have the Zip City Brewing Company Beers of the Chesapeake Bay Region, 17 April 1993. Fruit salad, yellowfin tuna chili with black beans and creme fraiche, gingerbread waffles with maple syrup, Vermont maple syrup, poached eggs with smoked salmon and lime chive hollandaise, devil's food cake made with catamount porter, and Oreo cheesecake. That was the recipe, menu for the beer dinner there at Zip City. So that was a lot of those were really some of the most fun. And the beers that were served there, it was stuff like Wild Goose from Cambridge, Mass., which no longer exists, Old Dominion, Asheboro, Virginia, it doesn't exist anymore, In fact, none of them do, and neither does Zip City. But it was one of the, at that time, I was able to meet Jeff Silman, who was the brewer there, and the owner, or well, the fellow who put together the consortium to do it as well. And he was started out as a home brewer. So that was one of the interesting things of tying beer into and learning about the business, especially watching what happened to Zip City. And I will go into the story of that later for sure. It wasn't just small breweries or small brew pubs either. The American Festival Cafe in in Rockefeller Center also sponsored beer dinners. And this one was March 23rd in 1993. We had some Harpoon Golden Lager, a Sneak Tartare. That was to start with. And then the first course, you had Harpoon. Oh, this was a Harpoon dinner. Crisp fried marinated green herring, dilled potato salad, veal cutlet. That was with a Harpoon Light, with the Harpoon Ale, veal cutlet with ham, Gruyere cheese, and buttered spinach spatzel noodles. A little bit like a French dish. I can't remember the name right now. Dessert course was poppy seed strudel with vanilla whipped cream, served with a stout. And I thought that was pretty interesting. At the time, the chef de cuisine was Juan Brenes, and the exec chef was Seppi Regili. Steve Hindy of Brooklyn Beer sponsored it, and that was a lot of fun. But after cooking and eating with beer was done, I had a chance to go to Philadelphia to the Book and the Cook, and was featured at a place called The Cutters, which was a relatively upscale restaurant at the time, but they were known mainly for their back bar, as you can see there, the listing of all of their liquors and good stuff. So they were just starting to put handcrafted beers into the menu, and that's where I fell in. So those are some of the different places and bars and dinners that I've done, and I think that I will be later on next week for sure. The second part of the beer tasting of meeting with the Old Growler is going to be covering and going back and remembering where these places were and why they were important to me as a journalist and as a professional barfly. Okay, let's see now. If anybody has any questions or observations, I wouldn't mind you putting them down in the comments area so that I can follow up on them. Oh, if I can only remember, push and pull, push me, pull me. It's a Brooklyn brewery, not 6 Points. Well, that's one of those things that happens every once in a while. You don't have the note in front of you, and you wish you did. It's a good beer for today. Actually, I would have liked to have had a lager because it is unseasonably warm. I would say it's probably in the 80s, and let's just take a look and see if it is. Not cheap. Weather Channel. 79 feels, whoops, no, 81 feels like 82. So much for the turtleneck for the Old Growler. I'm going to have to get back to my summertime polo shirts. That's going to be a change. And oh, geez, I'm going to have to change to the straw hat. Oh, the weather's getting hot. All right. Well, hold on. I'm going to look up Push Me, Pull Me just to see. Push Me, Pull Me beer. Keg and Lantern Brewing Company in Brooklyn. Yes, so it is, the Keg and Lantern. I'll have to look those kids up and thank them for their beer. All right. Well, no, actually, I don't have to thank them because it's the growler system. Boy, I'm going to have to do something about the light too here in the summertime. It looks like that. Yes, my beard is old. There we go. Well, they say the camera adds 10 pounds in 20 years. But in that case, I've got real trouble. In any event, I want to thank you folks for coming here, being around. It was a lot of fun trying the ginger beer. I had a real kick out of that. And as I say, boy, that ginger beer and gin, I'm going to have to talk to some of my bartender buddies and see if they can come up with a name for that, or I'm just going to have to experiment. In any event, starting Monday, the Old Growler is going to have, as I say, the two parts. One's the tasting. The other is my reminiscence, or my life as a professional barfly. And I appreciate everyone watching today. And I hope that you all have a good, happy, safe weekend. And all of your beers meet expectations. Cheers.